Subject that we're going to learn about today is a little bit of continuation of what we were speaking about a couple of weeks ago, which is that the Sfaradim accepted upon themselves Maran, Rabbi Yosef Karo, as their Marad De'atra, as their posek, as their Rav. So the question is the following: to what parameters and to what degree did they accept Maran for their Rav? And we're saying the Divrei Torah today, Le'il Nishmat Shalom ben Avraham, Shayom Pikudat Shenato. So these words of Torah should be an elevation of its soul. So it's the following: when we accepted upon ourselves the opinion of Maran Shulchan Aruch, we mentioned that the Hachamim of Morocco accepted Maran not in the standard way that we would think, like a Rav for everything, because you can't say Tzaddik Brachot Le'aked, you can't say that, well, whenever we have a question in Brachot, we're going to be lenient against him, and we can't say we can't say Kimli. Do you remember the principle of Kimli, that let's say you're in a monetary decision that you want to say, well, I want to go like the minority opinions against Maran. But the Moroccans, they held of Maran because Maran was based on the three Gdolim of the Rif, Rambam, and Rosh, and 2 out of 3, that's how he decided. And we only accepted the opinion of Maran of what's written in the Bet Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch. But not in responses, and not in his commentary on the Rambam, and not in his Bedek Habayit, which has many, many ramifications. So I want to continue in this regard.
Does that make sense? And not in response, because the response is based on what is written.
So the question is like this: what does that mean? We accepted Maran. The way you're looking at it, it doesn't make sense, because you're looking at it like we accepted him like a Rav, like you accepted upon yourself as this one of us your Rav, we have been this on your Rav. But how can you accept on someone your Rav if he's not alive anymore? The answer is we accept his written word. Now, accepting his written word means that we accept his writings. So we say we accepted the Shulchan Aruch and Bet Yosef. Let me tell you something. According to your approach, that we accepted everything that he said, this was Rav Avadia's approach. Rav Avadia has the following question: what happens if in the later generations they unearth and they discover new writings? They unearth and they discover new writings that weren't published beforehand, and that should make a difference in how we decide halakha. Do we say if Maran would have saw this, he would have really changed his opinion or not? You know, there was a very great Algerian Chacham. His name was Rabbi Shimon ben Tzemach. It was the Tashbetz, the Rashbat. He was a very, very big Gaon. He was in the time of the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch saw some of his psakim, but some of his psakim he didn't see. So in the introduction to the Sefer of the Tashbetz, there's the Algerian Chachamim, they comment the following. They say, our Rav, the Tashbetz, was so great that if Maran, a lot of times he saw his opinion, and he saw it was against his opinion, he would retract. He says, therefore, since Maran didn't see all of what's written in the Tashbetz, if something is written in the Tashbetz, not like Maran, we say the following, that if Maran would have saw the Tashbetz, he would have went back on his opinion. That's what they write. Which means that even on something that the Tashbetz is more lenient, for example, in issues that have to do with marital status, Maran would call this person a mamzer, and he wouldn't call this person a mamzer. So since if Maran would have saw this, we could follow the Tashbetz. So Rav Avadia Yosef says, based on this opinion that the Chachamim of Algeria wrote and that introduction of the Sefer Tashbetz, he says, so too, anything that you find writings that are afterwards that Maran would have went back on, that's what we follow. And this is wondrous. Why? Because that would mean the following. Let me give you a couple of examples. There was one question in regards to, and this Rav Avadia Yosef in his first volume has much discussion on. Do women say a bracha on time-bound obligation mitzvot? For example, shofar or lulav. Do women make a bracha on lulav? The Rama says women make a bracha on lulav. Maran says women don't make a bracha on lulav. Personally, I asked this question to Rabbi Shalom Esas, And he said women hardly make brachot, so there was no real custom by us. They didn't make mezuzah. They made up for a couple of tefillot, and that's it. But it seems to be by the Baghdad people, and from the Hida already, women would make brachot on lulav. Rav Ben Ishchai writes that way. So Rav Ovadia says we should follow the halakha like Maran, right? But there's a responsa of the Chida. There's a response of the Chida, and he says the following. There was one of the Rishonim, one of the early commentators. His name was the Mahari Mimaryosh. Okay, he came from a certain place, and he had a lot of questions. So what did he do for his questions? He said he was going to go into his dream, and in his dream he was going to ask the yeshiva in heaven what the real answer is. So one of his questions is that women should they make a bracha on lulav? That was his question. Should women make a bracha on lulav? I guess they didn't have stocks in those days. You would ask them what stocks to buy, right? Yes, what bracha they should make on lulav? So Rav Yosef Mimaryosh it was answered that the more brachot they do, the better, which means that they should make the brachot.
What are they chayav?
No, they're not chayav, but they're allowed to make the bracha. Rav Ovadia says, the Maran says, you're not allowed to make the bracha because she can't say vitzivanu. She was a mitzvah, but they held it's not a problem because they still receive reward. It's a machloket in the Rishonim. Maran is posek they can't, others say they could. This person, Marim Maryosh, had a dream and he said that they could. So all of a sudden he started saying posek that you can make the bracha. So they asked. So the Chida writes in Yosef Ometz that if Maran would have seen this responsa from the Maharim Maryosh, he would have retracted and he would have been posek that they could make a bracha. What do you say to that? Pretty good, huh? Rav Ovadia Yosef, in theory, agrees with this chida. In practice, he says, I don't believe we could be posek in things mina shamayim. Torah's over here. And he has 4 different responses about this. He goes on and on and on and on, and he comes out and he says we don't have to accept the chida. But he accepted the theory that if Maran would have seen things that he didn't see, he would have retracted. In this case, he wouldn't have retracted. But in other cases, he would retract. So this has a lot of ramifications to Kabbalah. Remember we were discussing 2 weeks ago that if the Maran would have seen what the Arizal wrote, if Maran would have seen what the Tashbetz wrote, if Maran would have seen what this one wrote, he would have retracted. What these Rishonim wrote, he would have retracted. Rabbi Shalom Mesas is vehemently opposed against this. And he says the following. He says that basically we nullified the acceptance of Maran. We say we accept Maran, no holds bar. Like this, we don't accept Maran. We accept Maran, but it depends. If we find something better that he would have been, that's not really called accepting Maran. That's not really called accepting Maran. And furthermore, he writes a point that I think that is very accurate, that we didn't accept Maran's opinion the way that you understood, that we accepted all of the books. If we accepted all the books, that means we accepted, we want to know really what was in his mind. If we want to know what was really in his mind, so if we find something later on, he could have retracted, he wouldn't have held that way. That's not the way we accepted Maran. We accepted what was written in the Bet Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch. And there's a very beautiful explanation from the Sefer Urim V'Tumim. It was written by Rav Yehonatan Eibeshitz. It was one of the great Geonim of the great Geonei Ashkenaz in the late 1700s, 1800s. He writes the following. He writes, if it's true that you start saying, if Maran would have saw this, he would have retracted, or you could say Kimli against Maran, that's what he's talking about over there. So then En La Davar Sof, the thing never ends. Because you're always going to find this opinion, and maybe he would have held this opinion, or held that opinion. Rather, he says, the approach that we accepted Maran and the Rama was God sent to us. That they had the special siyata dishmaya, they had special help from Hashem, that whatever was recorded, that's the halakha that Klal Yisrael should follow. So you're right, you're going to have different dissenting opinions over here, dissenting opinions over there. It doesn't mean to say that in a couple years later, you might find other opinions that supported Maran, right? Like the medical journals. You have medical journals say one thing one day, and the next generation, they're going to find something another day. Now they just came out. The carbs are not so good, and beforehand America was based a little bit more on carbs, so they're going back on carbs. Everything always changes. So we can't keep on going back and forth. We know that there's different opinions, but the way that we accepted it was written in the Bet Yosef Shulchan Aruch. Even though we're going to find in the Teshuvot of Bet Yosef that he himself says, well, I retract, doesn't matter. We accepted what because he didn't decide according to his opinion, Maran. He decided according to the three great giants, Rif, Rambam, and Rosh, 2 out of the 3. So who says the Rif would have agreed to that explanation that came out later? Who says the Rambam would have agreed to that explanation later? We can't keep on going back and forth because then we're never going to have a consent. So our consensus was always we're going on 2 out of the 3, which is Rif, Rambam, Rosh. We go 2 out of the 3, and that's who we accepted. So this plays itself into many different ramifications. But basically, what comes out is that Rav Ovadia says that a lot of times, if Maran would have saw this, we would have retracted. And Rabbi Shalom says no. We don't say that, and according to and I think that it's dependent upon how we accepted Maran. If we accept the way that Rav Ovadia says we accept Maran's opinion, like he was Mara de Atra in everything, so you could start going back on things if you would have seen this. But if you accept the way that we're talking, that we accepted the Rif, Rambam, and Rosh, and the way that Maran was posek, we accepted the theory, as we call it, and Maran's theory, and we accepted what's written in the Sfarim. So then, there's a limit. We're not going to start saying, if he saw this, if he saw that. And there's actually a sefer called Kapei Aaron from Rabbi Aaron Azriel that wrote a similar thing, like Rabbi Shalom. It says that we don't start saying, if he would have seen, we would have went back.